Hello and welcome to Module 3. In this module we're going to look at how to understand and analyze graphs, charts and tables. So let's look in more detail at what we're going to do in this module. We're going to look at how to identify the key features of the data sources. The data sources are of course the graphs, bar charts and pie charts and that sort of thing. We're going to use these key features to understand the data in those data sources. And we're going to identify the purpose of the data sources. This is very, very important because it helps us identify the main features that we're going to include in our answer. Now this module is very important because lots of people who are doing Task 1 have never really dealt with data sources like pie charts, graphs, tables, things like that before. So it takes them a while to identify the main features, to understand them, and you only have 20 minutes to write your full answer. So being able to identify the key features, understand the data, and identify the purpose quickly is key to writing a good answer. If you know how to do all of these things, you will be able to understand everything very, very quickly, plan your answer and start writing quickly and finish within 20 minutes. So first we're going to look at the features of a line graph or a bar graph. So this is a typical line graph that you might get in IELTS writing Task 1. And there are 5 features of any line graph or bar graph. You will have a title, you will have an x-axis which is horizontal, a y-axis which is vertical, you will have units of measurement, and you'll probably have a key. So let's look at each of them in more detail. So here is the title, and the title will help you understand everything in the graph. So first you should look at the title and understand it. Then this is the x-axis, this is horizontal or flat. This is the y-axis, this is always pointing up, and then you will normally have units of measurement on the x-axis and the y-axis. But I wanted to show you this one because sometimes you won't be given units of measurement. Instead you'll have to just assume them, imply them from the title. So the title is total population, so this will be number of people. So the unit of measurement here on the y-axis will be number of people. And there's nothing telling you what the unit of measurement here is, but 1870, 2010, we can assume that this is years, from years 1870 to 2010. So even though it doesn't tell us what the units of measurement are for X and Y, we can tell what they are from looking at the rest of the data. And then the key is this. It's just telling you that the blue line means total population. So you might have 2 lines or 3 lines or 4 lines, and it will normally have a key here, and one will be a yellow line or a green line or a red line, indicating what those lines represent. So then if we move on to the bar graph, we can identify the features here. Here is our title. Here's our x-axis, here's our y-axis, and in this one it tells us the units. So this one is percentage, so 10%, 20%, 30%, and then this is groups of years, so how old people are. And then the key is here. It's telling us the blue bars are women and the white bars are men. So you should be able to look at this graph and quickly understand what is happening with the graph. If you don't think about all of these various features, you won't be able to understand it properly. You will probably make mistakes, or it will take you a long time understanding it. So let's move on to the features of a pie chart. So here is a pie chart. A pie chart is always just a circle, and then it's cut into different sections. So there are 3 things that a pie chart has. It will have a title, it will have a key or a label, and it will have units of measurement, normally percentages. So here we have the title, browser usage on Wikimedia, between in October 2011. The key is on each piece, so it is labeled here for us. However, in some graphs it might be here, so it might say Chrome green, Firefox red, IE blue, Safari purple. So it might be on the side along here, or it might just be here. And then we have the unit of measurements here, and these are always percentages, because a pie chart is always just showing percentages or proportions. It's just an easy to understand way to represent proportions or percentages. So the key features of a table, here is the table I showed you in the last module. And the four main features here are title, columns, rows, and units of measurements. So here is the title. It will help us understand what's happening first. Here are the rows. So rows go across like this, and columns go down. So these are the three columns. So columns go up and down, and rows go across. And we're told here the measurement is millions of euros. So by looking at these four things, looking at the title, looking at the columns, looking at the rows, and looking at the units of measurement, we can easily understand what's happening. And this is two different tables here, so we need to take that into consideration as well. So now let's look at the most important part of this module, finding out the purpose of the graphs, charts, or tables. So it is important to understand the data, but it is even more important to know the purpose. So what we've looked at already is how to understand the data quickly and know what we're dealing with. However, the next step is understanding the purpose. All graphs and charts display data. However, there will normally be more data than required. So if we look back at this, there is lots and lots of data here. And lots of students will look at this and go, I don't know which one to pick out. I don't know what to write about and what not to write about. I can't write about all the data. There just isn't enough time. So it's important that we identify the key features, and purpose helps us to do that. So identifying the key features means that we identify the most important information, the information that we're going to include in our overview and our details paragraphs. And to do that, we need to think about purpose. So there are two main purposes for graphs, charts, or tables. The first one is to show trends over time. So trends from the beginning of the time to the end of the time, that is in the graph or the chart. And the second main purpose is to compare and contrast data. So comparing things that are similar or contrasting things that are different. So if you know the difference between these two, you can quickly identify the purpose. So let's look at each of these in more detail. So trends over time. You'll always be able to tell if it's a trend over time by looking at the bottom axis. So this axis, time will always go in this direction. So it will go from the past into the present or the future. And what they want you to do is identify the general trend that happens from the start to the end. So we're not going to get into too much detail because we're going to look at this in far more detail in a later module. But if we just looked at Africa, so Africa's goes very, very flat for a long time, and then it goes up slightly, and then it goes up a bit more, and then it goes up quite a bit. That's too much information for a general trend. They don't want you to talk that much about from here, then to here, then to here, then to here. What they want you to just say is from this point to this point, what happens? So from that point to that point, this happens. Straight line from point A to point B, there is a increase. Alright, and that's as simple as they want you to put it. Don't overcomplicate it, just a increase. So you could say a gradual increase, and for this one it would be a dramatic increase. And same for this one. So this isn't a line graph, it's a bar chart, but because we can see here that there is a timeline going from the past to a later date in the past, so from 1801 to 1961. They want you to identify what the general trend was from 1801 to 1961. Now, lots of people might say, oh, it went up, and then it went down, and then it went up, and then it went down, and then it went up, and then leveled, and then went down, and then leveled again. That's too much information for a general trend. What you're going to do is just from point A to point B, what was the general trend? It decreased. But from 1801 to 1961, it decreased. That was the general trend over time. And in your answer, you can go into more detail about in between years, going up and down, but the overall trend is just a decrease. And we're going to look at that in much more detail in Module 5 and Module 7 and 8. So comparing and contrasting. Comparing and contrasting is when you have no date. So you look at this one, there are no dates. This is when they've just asked people, it's a survey, so it will be one date, not over time. What's your favorite color? Okay, very, very simple. So because there's no date, we can't talk about any general trends. So what we need to do is compare things that are kind of the same and contrast. So we would say things like blue is the highest and pink is the lowest. So we've contrasted blue and pink. Flesh, white and yellow are relatively the same. They're all quite low. Grey compared to flesh, grey is about 3 times bigger than flesh, and red is about 25% bigger than grey. So what you can do is just you compare and you contrast between each of the categories, so you don't think about time. Let's look at another example, comparing and contrasting. So this is comparing and contrasting in a pie chart. So these are world religions, and you can see this was just in 2007. So it's just one date. So you're not trying to track religions over time, like how many Catholics there were 100 years ago, 50 years ago, and today, or how many Muslims there were 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and today. It's just looking at 2007. What percentage of the population of the world, so it's world religions, were there in 2007? So comparing and contrasting, you could say that Muslims and Catholics were the 2 biggest in terms of proportion, and then you could say Sikhs and Jewish people were the least, and you could also add up the other Christians. So other Christians, Anglicans, Orthodox, Protestants, these are all types of Christian people. So you could add those up and you could compare them to Catholics, who are also Christian. So this is just comparing different percentages on one date. You might also be asked to compare pie charts from different dates and different countries. So if we look at this, we have Italy and Yemen. So these are both for Yemen and these are for Italy. But if you look here, it's 2000 and 2050. So from the past and projections for the future. So you could compare Yemen from the past and the future. So for this one, this is 15 to 59-year-olds. You would say it is projected to increase for 15 to 59-year-olds. And you could compare, so that would be comparing these two. And you could also contrast these two. So you could say, let's stick with 15 to 59-year-olds. You could say that Italy has a far bigger population, or had a far bigger population than Yemen of 15 to 59-year-olds. However, Yemen had a much higher population of 0 to 14-year-olds than Italy. So you'll see that you compare both time and you compare and contrast countries. So let's think about what we achieved in this module, what we did and how we improved our knowledge of writing Task 1. So we identified the key features of each of the data sources, that these will help us understand the data, and we identified the purpose for each of the data sources. So you should think about trends over time, or just one particular moment in time or 2 moments in time, and comparing and contrasting that data. So now that we understand both the actual data and the purpose of the data, we can move on to the next module. So in the next module, we're going to look at how to plan our answers, how to identify the key features, and how to structure our answers. So I hope you find that module useful and you understand graphs, charts, and pie charts in much more detail. And thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next module. Goodbye.